Boris Johnson is under mounting pressure to retract his Jimmy Savile slur against Keir Starmer after the Labour leader faced mob abuse outside Parliament. Mr. Starmer was bundled into a police car on Monday after being swarmed by protesters shouting traitor and accusing him of protecting paedophiles. Some of the crowd were understood to be carrying a noose and were repeating the untrue claim that Mr. Starmer failed to prosecute Savile when he led the Crown Prosecution Service. In footage of the incident, shouts of "Were you protecting Jimmy Savile" could be heard, while protesters also shouted at the Labour leader for supporting COVID vaccines. The scenes came only days after the Prime Minister claimed in the Commons that Mr. Starmer failed to prosecute Savile, a false claim used by the far right, as he failed to defend himself over the Partygate row. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who was accompanying the Labour leader, said it was no surprise the conspiracy theorist thugs who harassed them had repeated Mr. Johnson's slurs. The PM finally sought to clarify the remark several days later after a furious backlash, but he has not apologized for making the claim. Last night, he tweeted the behavior directed at the Labour leader was absolutely disgraceful but did not address the nature of the abuse. At least 9 furious Tory MPs broke ranks to demand the Prime Minister withdraw his remarks after the scenes outside Parliament. But Technology Minister Chris Philp insisted the PM's words had not incited the abuse suffered by Mr. Starmer. Former Northern Ireland Secretary Julian Smith, who challenged the PM over the smear last week, said, "What happened to Keir Starmer tonight outside Parliament is appalling. It is really important for our democracy, for his security, that the false Savile slurs made against him are withdrawn in full." Senior backbenchers Simon Hoare and Stephen Hammond echoed his concern, with Mr. Hammond adding, "As I said last week, Julian is right." Ex-Brexit Secretary David Davis said Mr. Johnson shoulder responsibility and apologise unreservedly. Tobias Ellwood, Tory chairman of the Commons Defence Committee, demanded an apology from the PM, adding, "Let's stop this drift towards a Trumpian style of politics from becoming the norm." Senior Tory Sir Roger Gale said he feared the incident could be the result of Mr. Johnson's deliberately careless Savile allegation. "It has, I'm afraid, played into the hands of some rather unpleasant people," he said. "I think what he ought to do, is to go to the dispatch box tomorrow to condemn the way Keir was treated and apologise." Aaron Bell, Anthony Mangel and Rob Lagan, from the 2019 intake of Tories, also criticised the Prime Minister's actions. However, Mr. Philp insisted Mr. Johnson was not responsible. "I don't think you can point to what the Prime Minister said as the cause of that. You certainly can't blame him for the fact that that mob were clearly behaving in a totally unacceptable way," he told Sky News. "I don't think it in any way justified or provoked or incited the terrible and totally unacceptable harassment and intimidation of the leader of the opposition." Conservative peer Lord Lilly, a former cabinet minister, said we're all getting a bit precious about this. Both sides are saying the person at the top of the organisation is responsible for what happens further down. Both sides should probably apologise and stop making personal remarks, he told BBC Newsnight. Kim Ledbetter, the sister of murdered MP Jo Cox, who is now herself a Labour MP, said she was incredibly angry and upset about what had happened. Words have consequences, leaders have a duty to behave responsibly, and politics is not a game. Our country deserves far better, she tweeted. SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon said, "Any politician choosing to weaponize online conspiracy theories against opponents knows fine well that they risk stirring up the kind of hate and abuse that Keir Starmer experienced today. If he has any decency at all, the PM will now apologize unreservedly." Mr. Starmer apologized in 2013 on behalf of the CPS, having failed to bring Savile to justice 4 years earlier. But there is no evidence that he had any personal role in the failure to prosecute the serial paedophile. Scotland Yard said 2 people were arrested on suspicion of assault after a traffic cone was thrown at a police officer during the unrest.